The Ohio State University College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Science is a driving force throughout rural Ohio, and in particular, its South Centers located in Piketon, Ohio. The South Centers provides research and educational formats in a number of areas, including horticulture, fruits and vegetables, soil and bioengineering, aquaculture, and business development services. Dr. Tom Worley, director of South Centers, hosts a monthly South Centers chat. Here's Tom.
Welcome once again to the South Centers chat. We're pleased to be here from Piketon, Ohio today. As the intro mentioned, we have the OSU South Centers over at Piketon, Ohio, which is a unit of the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Science of Ohio State University. We are administered through the research arm of the college at Worcester, Ohio, as well as OSU Extension, which is headquartered on the main campus in Columbus, Ohio. Many of our viewers, I'm sure, would be familiar with the local county extension operations, and we coordinate with all of these locations throughout the state, as well as our colleagues in Columbus and Worcester in the four major areas that were also mentioned in the introduction: aquaculture, horticultural crops, soil and water resources, and business and economic development. In addition to these primary programs that we have a nucleus of people operating there, OSU Extension has some specialists that are located with us at South Centers due to the programming that they represent that is applicable to this region of Ohio. And it's my great pleasure to have Dr. Dan Remley, one of these staff members from OSU Extension, who is a field specialist in food and nutrition and wellness, to be with me today. And welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Glad that you could be here. And how long have you been with us located at South Centers?
Since March of 2012.
March of 2012. And prior to that, you were with OSU Extension?
Yes, I was in Butler County. OSU Extension in Butler County, just north of Cincinnati, south of Dayton.
Right,
so
right.
Very metropolitan area, suburban, but we also had quite a bit of rural too. So
Right.
I'm in more of a rural setting, but I do have projects all over the state.
Yeah, yeah. Before we get into the kind of the crux of what we want to talk about today in the nutrition area and how that relates to our health, help just the viewers understand what a field specialist, what does that really mean in that working title for you?
Okay, so in Butler County, for example, I was a family and consumer sciences extension educator. And so I was sort of a generalist, so I worked on not only nutrition and health programs, but I would also do parenting and financial management education. The field specialist position is a much more focused position in extension, and so my programs focus specifically on food, nutrition, and wellness.
Right, right. And your kind of area that you look at is pretty much statewide, if I'm not mistaken.
I give a lot of, I really have three areas that I develop programs and work with. I have three areas that I do programs in. One is diabetes education, and the other is youth and workplace wellness. And then the third area is healthy and sustainable food systems.
Okay, very good. And in this time that you've worked here across Southern Ohio, I think you've had a chance to kind of assess the state in general of our health of the population and kind of what the current situation is. Could you comment some on the factors that you are aware of?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, Tom, this region is probably the unhealthiest, and according to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, these counties down here have the lowest rankings in terms of diabetes rates and obesity. So let me rephrase that. The counties in the southern part of the state have the highest rates of diabetes and obesity and a lot of the chronic diseases. But it is, Ohio is, as a state, we kind of lead the pack, unfortunately, in terms of rates of diabetes and heart disease and obesity. So
even compared to the 50 states, we still have.
Compared to the 50 states. So we can do a better job, for sure, in terms of improving our quality of life and lowering those rates of some of those chronic diseases.
What are some of the factors you think that are maybe we can address from OSU Extension perspective in terms of the factors that are indicated?
Well, we're trying to help people make healthier choices in terms of what they eat every day. And also reducing stress is a big contributor to a lot of these problems. And in addition, but also physical activity is another culprit. So trying to get people to be more physically active on a daily basis.
Okay.
So those are three big areas that I work on. But not only helping individuals make healthier decisions, but also improving the environment in which people live. So making sure that there are healthy choices in the grocery stores,
Yeah.
or if trying to make sure communities are walkable.
Okay.
So that's another area. We're trying to improve healthy choices in the environments in which people live, but also helping people make informed choices as well.
Very good, very good. Well, I just can't avoid making a kind of a personal statement here that I was one of those statistical data points in terms of kind of having health issues, in terms of living a pretty sedentary lifestyle, working in an office, driving a car, not getting much physical activity, which led to getting my arteries clogged up around the coronary, things that are very critical in terms of warding off heart attack. And fortunately, I was able to discover that and actually underwent triple bypass in time before I actually had the heart attack. But it did take that. It took that kind of a wake-up call to get me aware of the very things that you're talking about and the very things that needed to be changed if I were to avoid becoming, a second episode of this. So I certainly have by no means arrived in terms of exercise and weight management and all these things, but I certainly have made those much greater priority than I had in the past. And I think that I'm only an example of what can happen through education and through greater awareness. It's just unfortunate it took that major event and life-threatening event to actually get me to do it.
Well, as you know, as I've told you before, when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and so that was the major event in my life that that propelled me into this career.
Very good, very good. Well, Dan, can you share with us a little more specifically about some of the work that you do in terms of addressing diabetes, for instance,
Sure.
and how that might relate to the foods that we have available? And
Yes, we have Extension has a signature, or it actually was a signature program. It's called Dining with Diabetes, and it's offered throughout the state, but essentially it's a healthy cooking school for people with diabetes. And so we do diabetes education. We typically partner with a local hospital. We have a registered dietitian that will come in. But we do offer those food demonstrations, and so we demonstrate healthy cooking skills. And then there's a taste testing component, which is also very popular. So we will show you how to prepare foods that are lower in carbohydrates, are lower in fat and sodium, and just generally talk about how you can prevent or delay complications and manage your diabetes, so you can take control of your health and your blood sugars and that type of thing. And so we offer that all throughout the state. And if you're interested, you can call your local extension office. Every extension office is a little bit different. So some have a family and consumer sciences educators, others do not. But sometimes I will work with an office that might not be fully staffed, and so if there is a need for a Dining with Diabetes program somewhere in some of these smaller extension offices, they might call me and we can get a program going.
excellent.
But it is 3 sessions long, and we also have a reunion as well. So it's been a very popular program. I give a lot of state leadership to this program. So it's as I said, there's a big need here for down here in these counties for diabetes education, because we do have some of the higher rates of diabetes in southern Ohio, Appalachian region of Ohio. So, and it was developed in West Virginia too. That'd be great.
The opportunity for dining diabetes still exists, and even though the program may have been offered in prior times, it doesn't mean that it can't be repeated if there's an organization or a group come together out of a common interest to have one of these.
And I also want to mention we do have an online class that you can take advantage of. And the web link is below on your screen below there. And this is a class you can get online if you have a computer and have internet. You can get online, click this web address, and there's an online module. There's 3 sessions. And what we do is we take you through carbohydrates. So we address how to manage carbohydrates in the first session. The second session, we focus on lowering fats and sodium, which, as you know, with heart disease is
important.
Very important. And it's important with diabetes, too, because people that have diabetes are at greater risk for heart disease and cardiovascular disease in general. So we want to be mindful of fat and sodium. And then the third session focuses on vitamins and fiber and minerals. And so these 3 sessions, we focus on helping you make healthy choices when you're at the grocery store and also eating out as well. And then we review some important lessons that are offered in the Dining with Diabetes class, too. Excellent. So there's quizzes, there's interactive chat forums that you can take advantage of. Okay. There's an opportunity to interact with Ohio State University faculty like me. If you have a question, you can pose a question in on the online course, and I'll get back with you. So, and you can interact with other people that have taken the Dining with Diabetes class as well, and you can offer your experiences or you can raise questions. So,
many times this online learning promotes community of people with like interests and so forth. So this is around how to manage this illness.
And now, a lot of people have smartphones now too. And so there's a lot of apps that can help people with diabetes manage their diabetes. And for example, Tom, if you were at a restaurant and you wanted to look up how much fat was in something that you were ordering, you could look that up online. And so we do address the apps as well, and we really look at different apps that you can take advantage of if you do have a smartphone. So there's a lot of technology out now that can help people with diabetes.
Right, good. I think another aspect that you've mentioned of this kind of health condition and situation that we face is kind of the lack of physical activity. And do you want to talk about walkable areas and kind of how exercise fits into the equation?
A lot of cardiologists are beginning to say that it's important to get that regular exercise 30 minutes a day for at least 5 days a week. And that can be accumulated. And so the bigger issue now is that researchers are beginning to find that what's really important is to avoid those long sedentary periods and to break them up with little bouts of physical activity. When we sit for long periods of time, that's extremely detrimental to our heart and our arteries. And so if you do have a sedentary job, for example, just getting up every half an hour and walking around, taking a 5-minute walk can do wonders for your health. It can do wonders for your stress and your emotions too at times. And in fact, we have some faculty that have standing desks, and I'm actually looking into getting a standing desk. But that's certainly an option.
So that even helps in terms of the circulation and kind of using our muscles and strengthening our
brains too.
Skeletal,
our mental. So it's that's something that a lot of cardiologists, for example, would suggest that we take the stairs instead of the elevator, and those little things can really make a big difference down the road. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say.
And it's worth moving. I think just movement is the kind of the bottom line here. It seems.
We're actually we're trying to do more standing meetings and more walking meetings, for example, and that gets the brain juices flowing as well. So those can be actually productive meetings.
Sure. Very good.
So there's a lot of little things, and we're actually trying to work with communities to really get communities to understand how some of these environmental influences can impact their health. And so if you live in a community where there aren't sidewalks, that can be detrimental to your health if you can't walk places. And so even in some of these smaller communities, we're seeing that there aren't as many walkable areas. And so some projects we're working on, there's a process I'm working with called HEAL Maps, and that's Healthy Eating, Active Living Mapping. And we actually have residents go out and they take pictures of their community. So they journal things they experience on regular routes, whether it's a bike route or a walking route or a driving route. And so they take pictures of features that they think could either hinder or support physical activity or healthy eating. And then they can take action around these features.
Sure.
So.
Well, very good. I think that another component of this overall program, this equation that we kind of talk about sometimes about our well-being and what contributes to that, is the availability of the right kinds of foods.
Right.
And can you kind of address
Sure.
that a little bit for us?
Yes, and this is very relevant for here in Southern Ohio. We have many rural areas
Right.
where, and Vinton County is one example. There's not a grocery store in Vinton County, and so we are trying to address. There's a lot of action in, of course, Athens with ACENET. They're doing a lot of work to increase the availability of healthy foods. I work around the state. We have a project called Voices for Food, and we're working in rural communities, and we're working with the communities to start food councils, which really look at the entire food system from production to consumption, everything in between, and trying to work on community goals that would improve what's available in grocery stores, working on projects like farmers markets, implementing farmers markets, community gardens, and actually very specifically food pantries. And so we're trying to transition food pantries from a traditional model where people walk in and just get handed a box or bag of food, and in some cases they don't know what to do with the food, or it's not culturally appropriate, or and so they just end up getting rid of it.
Well, the short answer is it is handed, as you suggest, without any involvement by those that are to consume the food.
Right,
So
exactly.
they have no say in the matter.
They have no
It's
say, and
kind of
so
what's available as opposed to what they might like or choose if they had any kind of choice.
And so in the My Choice model, what we're doing is we're distributing foods via the food groups. And so we have a fruit section, we have a vegetable section, and they get so many choices per food group.
Okay.
And so people learn about the idea of dietary variety, about trying to include a number of different food groups as they prepare meals for their families so that they get optimal nutrition.
Right.
And so what we do is they'll get a card, and the card has the different food groups on the card, and they can see how many choices they get per food group. And so the little caveat is we have a couple of some foods are hard to fit into, they don't fit nicely into one or two food groups. So there's a food group called the combination. And so that's like your macaroni and cheese and that type of thing. And then we have a miscellaneous, and that's where sort of the foods that are, we would call them junk food maybe, your sweets and your oils and things like that, the cookies, the cakes, the chips, and the candies. And so it does ensure that people can have a selection from a variety of different food groups, and they can have optimal nutrition for their families.
Great, great. Now, Dan, are there such, I think the kind of umbrella term is choice food pantries that are operated under this kind of a plan here in Southern Ohio?
Yes, we have a couple
examples?
communities that are developing the choice model, and then the idea is that they'll work with the food councils to procure certain foods that they need. And for example, we distribute food via the dairy group, and a lot of times food pantries have trouble having a wide selection of dairy items, so this would be something that they could talk to their food council about. And the food council could work with the food bank, or they could work with the community and have a healthy food drive, like a dairy drive, for example.
Sure.
I mean, maybe you've seen a food drive at your church. What do they ask you for? Canned, or a canned product. Not that canned are unhealthy, but there is a need for some of those fresh products as well. So, and logistically, working out those logistics could be something that the food council would work on.
And then the food pantry itself needs refrigeration or extra refrigeration.
And that would be something that they could work with the community to procure some of those items.
Right, right.
I will say that working with food pantry directors, they're some of the most resourceful people you'll ever meet.
Right. I think I got to be on a tour with you up around Worcester, Ohio, at one of these choice pantries, and it was operated out of the fellowship hall of a local church, and it was quite interesting to see the use and efficiency with which they had converted actually their fellowship hall into the pantry one day a week, as I recall.
Yep, I think that way.
And had purchased a truck to collect the food items from the food bank, as I recall, and other providers, using chest-type freezers, refrigerators to provide this healthy combination that Dan's been trying to describe, and have been very, very successful with it.
And I tell you what, health and food insecurity they go together, because if you have diabetes, you're going to be spending money on medicines and perhaps not food. So there are stories of people who are food insecure and they have to spend their resources on getting diabetes supplies.
Right.
And so they might not buy food, or they might not buy they might buy food and not buy the medicines.
Right.
And so and it's sort of a cyclical type of thing, and vicious cycle that we're trying to break. So
Dan, could you shed any light on the kind of the change at farmers markets, where the foods tend to be local, tend to be fresh, tend to be in that, a lot of them in that fresh fruits and vegetable, which are considered you know, the more incorporated into diets, and that relationship to the availability of using the SNAP dollars?
Sure. Well, as you know, Christy Welch from our OSU South Centers is working quite a bit on trying to help farmers markets with the EBT program. That's the electronic benefits transfer.
Right.
So if you do have the electronic benefits transfer and you're signed up for that program, then at a farmer's market you could go and swipe your card for tokens that you could redeem, that you could use with the vendors.
Right.
And so it's a way that up in Michigan, if you spend $10 in your EBT, they match that $10.
Oh wow, that's doubling your money.
Doubling your money.
Wow.
So we're trying to look at very similar models here in Ohio, so that people that are on the EBT program can have a really good good deal for supporting local local agriculture and local foods.
Excellent.
And that's good for local economies.
Certainly.
So, and there's a lot of value that go beyond the nutrition aspects of purchasing local. You really get to know the people and your producers in your community. It's a way to build that community.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Well, that gives me just an opportunity to mention that a lot of our work in this specialty crop area at South Centers has to do with fresh fruit production especially. We do some vegetable work as well. And to just talk a little bit about an upcoming workshop that we have on strawberry production and harvest. And of course that's a source of a fresh fruit that's in season here early in the season.
It's a great source of vitamin C and low calories.
Now, I knew you were going to help me there, and that's coming up this week yet on May 21st, and I know some of you may see this after the fact, but we have a schedule of such workshops from stretching across the summer. You can access our website and learn more about those dates, or give us a call to learn more about those programs. I think, Dan, that you have a couple other things that you want to mention here as we begin to wind down our time. Yes,
I worked with the Center for Advanced Functional Foods and Research and Entrepreneurship with the Department of Food Science in our college.
Okay.
And we actually, what we're doing is we're sort of translating that research can be a little heady at times. And so we've developed these cards for consumers, and so we've distributed these cards to farmers markets last season, but there might be still some floating around at some of the farmers markets, but we have a website that you can access to get more of these cards. I think it's listed below there. But essentially, these cards have recipes on them for various Ohio produce items, and they help you understand how you can preserve some of those nutrients once you purchase produce at the farmer's market or the grocery store. So when food is exposed to heat and light as you prepare food, sometimes you can lose nutrients, but there's certain things that you could do to help maximize the nutritional value of a lot of your produce that you get. For example, steaming is preferable over boiling. You lose a lot of water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C, even chlorophyll when you boil green beans. So preferable method is to steam your vegetables to retain the nutrients. And sometimes canned products actually have more nutrients than fresh. In the case of tomatoes, for example, the lycopene in tomatoes, which is thought to prevent some cancers, is actually more available in the canned versions. Now, that's not to say you can always can local foods as well, but so it kind of depends on the nutrient. But these cards are available online, but they also might be available in the farmers markets that you attend. So
excellent, very well, very well. Well, Dan, I know that your program has great need and great audience here in Southern Ohio as well as across the state. I don't think it is limited to any one region. as you've described, Ohio is not alone either in these very same issues that we're all as a society dealing with. And we certainly have appreciated your location with us at South Centers and the outreach and the education programs that you are doing. I think that it only goes to show you that many of the problems that we face in our society and in our region have a lot more than one dimension. And we tend to focus on, producing healthy foods, making them available, marketing them, and trying to help the producers have a profitable business in these areas that we work in, aquaculture and these fruits and vegetables, our small business development. But there's a whole aspect on the consumption side and on the demand side, and I think that we can't overlook that those two come together, and that many of the things that you've talked about today represent the other side of that equation in terms of the consumer and their changing needs, and as they become more aware, the opportunity to provide some of those needs that impact our health and well-being through the food choices that we make and how we choose to allocate our food dollars. So are there any final thoughts you want to get in here about OSU Extension or your program, Dan, as we wind down?
I would say that one thing we are working with, well, in terms of the family and consumer sciences programs, I think there are many dimensions of wellness. I think you kind of touched on this, but it's not just the foods that we eat. It's not just how physically active we are. It's not just our stress level. Stress is a big, it's a killer, as you know. And so our relationships influence our stress, as do our worries about finances. And so we're trying to integrate a lot of this parent relationship education, helping people, for example, that have diabetes, deal with some of the relationship issues that they might have with their spouse. Say their spouse is a little overbearing at times, in terms of telling them what they can and can't eat. So we try to address that, and also finances, helping people manage and cope with a chronic disease, for example, is very important. So
I think all these are components of the overall family and consumer sciences program within OSU Extension. So I think at this point we're about to wrap up. I'm not sure I have time to mention that Sam McKibben will be on the program a week from today. At 1 p.m., I think it is. Ryan Mapes will be here with a guest as well, and Dr. Donna Mitchell will be here congratulating nursing graduates here at the University of Rio Grande. So that next week's lineup on Wednesday. We hope you can join once again. Thank you for this time.